Now, All Things Real Estate continues on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN. Once again, here's your hosts, Gary Kelley and Brad Avergon.
Hi, and welcome back to All Things Real Estate on WCRN. I'm Gary Kelley with RE/MAX Executive Realty, and I'm joined with
Brad Avergon of Envision Bank and Mortgage.
You know, RE/MAX Executive Realty has a nice ring to it. Envision Bank and Mortgage.
You know, we're envisioning the future, which is quite timely considering. I think that trumps the RE/MAX. Given the current
environment. Are you going political on me here, Brad? All right, so this is our monthly show. We're here just on the precipice of Massachusetts lowering the shields. We're on May 12th. We're going to get some direction and guidance the day after the show, literally. This will play on the 17th. But from my perspective, as a real estate agent, we've continued to do business. Now, we've not been out going to people and door knocking and banging on doors and stuff like that. But if we have someone that has reached out or that we've been working with that says, I've got to sell my house. We had a couple that said, you know, we've already bought a house out in Western Mass. You've got to help us sell this thing. We had another couple that ironically was in the process of buying a house in South Carolina for work and needed their house sold. So we've been doing that on a basis that we've looked at as being safe, secure, that kind of thing. And that's been something, a message that we want to get out is that real estate hasn't stopped. We can talk more about numbers in a bit. Brad, what have you been seeing from your perspective?
I would say similar. You know, real estate hasn't stopped. I was actually pleasantly surprised the fact that people were still out there buying homes. Obviously, you know, changing the manner that they were doing things as far as making things more safer, but they were out there and they were continuing to look. Sellers were continuing to sell, and that's, for me, that's a good sign of the economy. That's that things are continuing to moving. The last thing you want to do is, you know, want an economy shut down. And I think, you know, one of the positive things you want to look at that what's happened here is we've learned to move forward as an economy through obstacles and through challenges. And, you know, certainly in our industry, Gary, we've moved through a tremendous amount of challenges that, quite frankly, were sprung on us pretty quickly. And we had to learn to move around them. And so I think that's been really, really good. You know, Gary, I have a question for you too, which is, do you think the evaluation process of a home has changed in more of a positive manner as a result of some of the safety measures? What I mean by that is, in the past, if somebody wanted to look at purchasing a home, they would, you know, call you up or contact you and say, you know, Gary, I'd like to see this house on Saturday. You know, can you take us out to see this house? And you might say, well, you know, were you pre-approved and so forth and so on. But there wasn't a lot necessarily of, I think and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but there wasn't a lot of digging beforehand on the buyer's part. The more was, let's go out and look at it, and then if we like it, and then we'll dig. Are you seeing more upfront research, looking at the videos, doing some background work on the town, so forth and so on, or the you know, what's been permitted or not permitted in advance of going and seeing a property versus prior to this virus?
Well, I am seeing more diligence done up front, and I don't think it's that the consumers have changed their behavior. I actually think real estate as a whole has changed its behavior. For example, having a step-by-step go through the house tour, not someone taking a little video, but we call it Matterport is the name of the company, but it's a click here, do a 360, click there, do a 360, and you can actually use the keyboard keys and literally glide through the house. We're finding that in the COVID era, people are setting up more of those kinds of tours, and consumers are flocking to them. Consumers are looking at those and saying, I didn't have this ability before. If you look at economics, and it's just pure economics. It used to cost me for a typical, let's say 2,000 square foot house, it might be $400 to have the professional photographer come in and do a scan of the house. And yeah, that's obviously not something you're going to do on every house. It just becomes an economic thing. And then there are companies that are out there doing it for as low as $250. Okay, so that becomes much more attractive. But now we've got technology that allows me to go in with a camera on a phone, on a monopod, take pictures, and you get the exact same experience. And frankly, it's a fraction of the cost. The camera cost me a few $100, and it's much more cost effective. So I think that that's become almost the standard now, and I think consumers are seeing that as a standard, and they are enjoying that. Consumers at this point are tending to have more time to look at houses, and so they're sitting at home, in the evening if they're working, or during the day if they aren't working, and they're going through and they're looking at homes that way. So when they actually come out and look at a house, they're much more informed about the house, and you'll hear them say things like, "Oh, I didn't understand this little corner over here. Now it crystallizes for me." I know that there's a view that says you ought to be able to buy a house and never walk into it. And I struggle with that, because I think you can go through a house and get the house in your mind. But I think that buying a house is a visual experience. You've got to hear it. You've got to smell it. You've got to feel the house. And you can't do that unless you can actually get in the house. We had a couple buy a house at the height of the pandemic. The house was in Southborough. They bought it sight unseen. Well, they looked at our photos in the Matterport tour. They bought it, but the first time they actually got into it was when the home inspection was done. And they drove here from Michigan for the home inspection. And then they turned around and drove back. That's an extreme view, but it made me feel better that they were buying the house on an informed basis, having been through the house once.
Right. It's funny. The key word I think you said there is feel. How does it feel? And I would agree with you for a couple of reasons. So, first of all, I'm sure a good listing agent is going to try to put the house with its best feet forward, with its best views, looking, and that's what they're going to try to market to. What that means is that if there's less attractive areas, they're not going to highlight those in videos or pictures or anything like that. So it's important to actually go through a property, I think, and see it and feel it, right? Feel it. How does the house feel when you walk in? Does it have a warm feeling? Does it feel like home? And the other aspect of it is feel. I'm seeing on my end, we're talking numbers more before they go see a property. How does this mortgage payment feel? What if we put an offer in on this? What would that mortgage payment feel like compared to what I'm paying for rent now, or what I'm paying for a mortgage right now? And it's that keyword feeling. I think they're becoming more sensitive to that, as opposed to this, let's just get into property, let's get a home. Real estate is this never-ending, panacea of increasing value. I think people want a home now. They want to feel safe. They want to feel that they could. What did somebody say? They want to feel that they could be confined to that home for a period of time.
Quarantine in the house.
Quarantine. That's the word I was looking for. Quarantine in the house. They want to feel they could be quarantined there, and that's all a feeling. How does the house feel? So I think that's key, what you're saying there.
Are you seeing people expecting a downward pressure on price at this point?
It's interesting that you bring that up. I see people that I've heard that from some clients, and I've actually it's been interesting conversations. Some people have said, "Oh, is the market going to crash? Is this a good time to buy? Is it not a good time to buy?" And I said, obviously none of us have a crystal ball, but you being in the business for a number of years, me being in the business for a number of years, we've seen different environments, and I personally don't believe that it's going to happen. based on what I've seen in inventory and such. What do you think?
I'm not seeing it happen at all. I see buyers go in, and some of them are expecting that, we're going to have a crash and I can buy opportunistically. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing sellers say, yeah, we're not having a crash. We're not having a meltdown. We're not going to lower our price. I think we're seeing some, what I would characterize as softness at the luxury end, but that's often a different kind of market. But in the starter home, the move up home, the downsizing home, I'm seeing buyers with a hope of getting a deal, and they're very quickly seeing that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's funny. I have clients that are looking in Rhode Island for a second home, and they keep getting beaten out, and they're surprised. They're surprised that they keep getting. They're in the I would say just under 500, between the 450 to 500 range, and they're surprised that they keep getting beaten out. Again, it's a second home. It's a luxury item, so you'd say, well, that market is going to soften before your basic housing market. But I think the thing is that there's a couple of factors. One is the low inventory is clearly a factor. People are staying in their homes longer. There's not a lot in our geography. When I say our geography, I'm talking about New England in general. There's not a lot of open space. There's not a lot of extra housing that's out there. And so given that people stay in their homes longer and they live in their homes longer, that turnover doesn't happen as rapidly. So when something does come up, you've got, a lot of bidders for that. And I think
Brad,
yeah.
let's hold that thought. Okay. We're coming to the end of our first segment. We're going to let Ted do a nice transition in the audio booth.
Thank you, Ted.
We'll run some commercials and pay for the station, and then we'll be right back in the second half and talk more about real estate.
You've been listening to All Things Real Estate on Full Service Radio, 830 WCRN.